Well, welcome to the Stress Reduced Fat Loss Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Sylvan. I have a very, very exciting guest to be on here, Dr. Calvin Ng. We met online, and I'm really excited to have you on today, brother. So what's going on? How you doing? I know it's early over there.
It is early. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. And it's such a pleasure to just have an opportunity to just speak freely about stuff. And thanks for having me on.
No worries. And it's 8 o'clock where you are, right? 8 o'clock?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, you got a busy day ahead, so we're gonna dive in and get into this. Today we're talking about pretty much fungus, and some of the issues with it, why we see it so much, ways to work on it and everything else. But before we get into that, I want some of the listeners to know a little bit more about you, some of your background. I found your background really interesting. So, oh, that's interesting. Okay. So that was my timer going off really early. I put for 32 seconds, not 32 minutes. Anyways, that's done. So yeah, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and then we're going to dive into your amazing statement of intentionally disruptive before we get into fungus talk. So talk about the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much, Ken, for having me on. So really, like I got into the space of holistic healthcare, functional medicine, and chiropractic medicine, and really all things healing the body naturally, because I was raised in a way where, for my mom, she really valued like healthy eating, healthy lifestyle, right? And it's more so covering the basics for her, but she really emphasized it. So through that, I got to, I got to see why she valued it, because my dad went through his health journey of having liver cirrhosis, and his first diagnosis was liver cirrhosis. For anybody out there who's wondering what that is, that's basically end stage liver disease. So how does like one person go from 0 to 100 just like that overnight? And it really seemed like it was overnight because he was sick. He had the flu and he was very stubborn. He didn't want to go to the doctors. And then we dragged him there. And he was like, just go see what's up. And the doctor was like, okay, well, why don't you get a blood test? So we ran a blood test and it came back that his like iron levels are high. I didn't know what I was looking at. My assumption is that his iron levels were high. I think that was the case. And he was like, well, you got to go see a hepatologist. We're like, what? He has the flu. What are you talking about? He was like, go see a hepatologist. We went to go see a hepatologist, the liver doctor, and they were like, okay, you got to go to UCSF. I lived in San Francisco. My family's from San Francisco. So top hospital there is UCSF. You got to go to UCSF liver transplant. What are you talking about? Like he has the flu. Like what's going on? And they're like, well, he has liver failure is what it looks like, and all these markers are off, you know blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay. So we go to liver transplant team and at UCSF, and they're like, yep, he's going to need a liver transplant. He's going to need to be on these medications. We're
And
going to
at
have
this
to run
time, right?
these
You
tests.
weren't you weren't a chiropractor yet. You weren't in functional to do
No,
functional help. No.
no,
Okay.
this was like, no, this was like, I was probably, I think, back in high school or maybe even before. Yeah, I was young. And yeah, so I didn't understand what was going on at all. No medical background, nothing.
Mhm.
You know, my two cousins were going through medical school at that time, or one was maybe already a doctor. And during that time, it was like, we navigated through those waters pretty blindly. And so it was all of a shock. It happened all of a sudden. So I questioned like what went wrong at that time, right? Like what happened? How did the body get there? But more importantly, I asked the doctors, well, what are we going to do to heal the body? What are we going to do to heal the liver? Like the liver is where I looked online that the liver cells are, can regenerate, like what can we do?
Mhm.
And they were like, well, there's nothing you can do. What you're going to do is you're going to wait until he gets sick enough, because there's something called a MELD score that they pull labs together to calculate. And the higher the score, the worse, the worse in condition that person is. And they do that for like organ transplants. So his melt score, I remember, was like at a 15 at that time. And it wasn't high enough because you're competing with three major hospitals in that area for, organ transplants. So he was like, well, either you do a living donor, which is basically like one of us giving him like half the liver, or you wait until he gets sick enough and he's at the top of the list. And I go,
They
what
also
kind of
tend to do it a
medicine
lot.
is
They
this?
tend to do it a lot with like, hey, let's wait a little bit. Let's like, I remember having some kidney challenges before with function, and it did the same thing. I said,
Yeah,
so, what's going on? They go, oh, just wait. We'll just keep coming
yeah,
back and checking, and as it gets worse, then we'll do it to do something. And I was like, I'll do
right.
that.
Exactly. So that's the problem with, I think, in modern day like mainstream medicine, is that the we have to wait until you're sick enough in order for us to treat. Um,
Mm,
and that becomes sick care. So I got to witness sick care and what it looked like. And so that was the whole narrative. I was asking like, hey, can we? And then I did my own research. I was like, okay, I started diving down these rabbit holes of like supplements and herbs and natural remedies and things like that. At that time, there wasn't a whole lot of things. Now you can find it left and right.
yeah.
But at that time, it wasn't popular. And when I talked to the doctor about it, they would just say, there's no research, there's nothing we can do. Like, that stuff is bogus. Like,
Mm,
there's nothing you can do to regenerate the liver. And I just go, wow, what a weird mindset, what a different it's so doom and gloom, it's so depressing to deal with that system. And I don't know if they were right at that time or wrong, but now looking back, I believe that they were wrong. I believe that there is a way to climb back. I believe that there is a way to regenerate and heal. And
Because you
even
found
if,
some things yourself, right? I remember when we talked online. You said, "Yeah, I did this, and I suggested some supplements." They're like, "Ah, what's that for? That's garbage," And
right, yeah, it's funny because for a long time, I mean, like a long time, maybe like, I don't know, like 5, 6 years, like that, his melt score stayed at 15 because I was just shotgunning him with so many liver herbs and supplements and things like
Mhm.
that, and encouraging him to, like, eat healthier. By that time, he's really good with like quitting things. Um, and most people would be like, oh, maybe he was an alcoholic. And no, it wasn't. He drank like at most one glass of wine a night, or maybe one can of beer, but he wasn't an alcoholic. He didn't do drugs. He was, again, my mom's a health freak, so we cooked pretty clean, so he ate pretty clean. I think what it was a lot of unresolved anger.
Mm,
He was a very angry, very frustrated. He ran his own company. He grew up in a village where he had literally nothing. So all that pressure, all that stress on him, I think that's what caused his body to really fail. And also, I believe that there's a huge like infectious component to it, which is what we're going to dive into, like fungal infections being one of them. I think there was a huge component to that, knowing what I know now.
for sure. And we
So
also know, right? Like it's the liver, the emotion that goes with the liver is usually anger, right? So
absolutely, yeah. So
so
that's in
so
Chinese medicine. That's what it goes with.
yeah.
Hmm.
So that kind of started your journey of the why and figuring out, okay, well, what could I do different, or where did it kind of lead you next? Because you obviously you ended up in Cairo, but you speak about more than just chiropractic.
Right.
You speak about so much.
Yeah. So when I was in chiropractic school, I when I was in chiropractic school, I discovered a technique in chiropractic, and it's called applied kinesiology, aka muscle testing. And through that system, it began to open me up to holistic health, because the premise, the philosophy in that, and how you look at the body, is from a physical, biochemical, and emotional point of view,
Mhm.
right? And the person who developed that technique basically wanted everything that he could find that would help someone, and figure out a way to make it work into his treatment. And that's how he discovered it. He was a chiropractor. He studied. His name was Dr. George Goodhart, and he studied chiropractic acupuncture. He went to China to study a little bit of acupuncture. He met with physical therapists. He met with people in his profession. He was a pioneer. So, anyways, I learned that, and as I was learning that, I was trying different things out on my dad. I didn't know what I was doing, but it just began to open my mind up, and I started doing more and more things. Um, well, again, we kept him good for a while until he had like a crazy infection. He had a gut infection that ultimately became a systemic infection, and he had sepsis. And by that time, he had multiple organ failure. And I watched him crash too during that time. I was at the hospital. I got a call and then drove back home and went to the hospital. And then he was like, he was conscious, and like talking to me, and it seemed like he just had like a really bad case of the flu once again. And then and then within a few hours, I just watched his system crash, and it was man, it was wild to see that. It was scary. And kidney failure. He was put on continuous dialysis. He was put on a ventilator, adrenaline pumping into his body so that his heart can still beat. I mean, so many things. And his liver was for sure gone
Yeah.
at that time. And finally, he was sick enough until yeah, we reached that stage. He was sick enough, and he was the top of the list. I mean, it took that, right? It took him to nearly dying
Mhm.
to get him to the top of the list to get a liver transplant. I still remember there was one night where at UCSF they called me and they were like, "Hey, it's going to be down to," because he was like unconscious and everything, and he was like, "Hey, it's down to these last 24 hours. Within in these 24 hours, if he doesn't turn around, then we got to really consider like other options, pulling the plug." I'm like,
Right.
what are you talking about? Like this was literally, happen in 1 week. So it was crazy to me. But when my back was against the wall like that, at that time, I didn't know if I shared this with you already, but at that time I was an atheist. I was huge. Like my mom was very spiritual, but I was very like against that practice. I was like, we're like, there's nothing that proves this in science. Everything like everything needs to be everything needs to go through a scientific process, the scientific method, in order for us to prove whether it's real or not, right? Like to mine like own like just being naive. And I remember that night I prayed for the first time, right? I prayed for the first time, and crazy enough, miraculously, the next 24 hours, his body literally started coming back. Like his function started improving.
Yeah.
Um, his bowel movement started moving. He was still unconscious, but his vitals were starting to come back. He didn't need as much adrenaline. It was crazy. And
My dad worked with the Ministry of Health for, I don't know, 30 years, but in the hospital on the other side, as he's a deacon, he did last rites for people. So he would be like not a chaplain, but someone to go in there and he would pray with them and then give the last rites. And he goes, Ken, when someone's body is deteriorating, because he's also a nurse, so he also
yeah,
taught nursing programs. So he knew the science, he knew this side. He goes, everyone starts to pray at the end. He goes, no
yeah,
matter what nationality, what religion, he goes, you feel it in the room when someone's body's going. He goes,
yeah,
everyone prays. You'd be so surprised, he said, how many things change when no matter who we are, we're holding hands and we're praying, how many times people change. And you feel it in the room first. You feel people shift,
100%.
right? So that's beautiful. You said that.
Yeah. So it was, I got to witness truly a miracle. When my dad got given a second chance to live, and he received a liver transplant. His function, he started coming back, and I remember there was one moment where, like he really couldn't go to the bathroom that much. Like he couldn't have move bowel movements,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned something in applied kinesiology to stimulate the acupuncture points. And again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just there stimulating his acupuncture points because I was like, maybe this will help him like move his
Yeah.
bowels. And then the next day he was like just flushing out. I mean, yeah,
That's great.
So it was amazing to just see some of this, work,
Mhm.
like have an effect on him like that. And then as he recovered, he was very weak. His motivate his he started, coming back online. His brain started coming back online. Started remembering my sister was there, and then his motivation, he was very weak at that time. His motivation to get back to fully functional and standing and walking was because my sister's wedding was coming up in like a couple months. And he was like, I'm going to walk you down that aisle, like one way or another. So he was very determined to go through physical therapy. Um, and yeah, like that man had his main thing is like willpower, like
Yeah.
just strong willpower. And I'm very proud of him for going through that. And after he got through that, we obviously made a whole lot of changes to
Mhm.
his health protocols and everything. We did a lot of holistic healing. We did acupuncture. We did a whole bunch of things on him. And so to get him to a point where he's thriving, and he's thriving now, which is amazing. So I can't, I'm not, and sometimes people go like, oh wow, you're really like, the stuff you say like really resonate. Yeah,
Makes
screw
sense.
Western medicine. I was like, whoa, no, 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 I'm not against Western medicine in terms of like emergency medicine and surgery and what they do. I mean, there's a time and place for that for sure.
Yeah.
But what I want to help educate people on is there's a different, healthcare is not the same as sick care. That's that's my
Yeah.
number one message
For
really for
sure.
people.
So then for you, that kind of drove you into it. Obviously you did Cairo. Did you do any other practices before we move out into some different stuff? Did you do anything else, like I said, besides
Yeah.
obviously Cairo and then
Yeah, so during college, I did personal training, and when I was doing personal training, I really loved it. Actually, I loved helping people. I loved educating people. I loved pushing people. Just yelling people I like to do burpees was kind of fun too.
there's some burpees.
Yeah, and and I did some nutrition coaching for them too because I was really into nutrition, and I did my studies in nutrition as well along with kinesiology. um yeah, and so I did that for a while, and it really, but I always felt like something was missing. I
Hmm.
felt like I could have helped people further. I felt like there was something else for me out there, but I wanted to do physical therapy actually in the beginning, but that road just didn't sound right, feel right to me. And then one of my professors, literally at the last month of school, of my in undergrad, said, "Why don't you check out chiropractic?" And I was like, "Ah, okay, I guess. I mean, I already cracked my friend's back. I guess I could do it for money." And so
Oh my
I
gosh.
yeah, so I went to the school. I was like, "Hey, what's the difference between chiropractic and PT?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, so in chiropractic, this is our philosophy, we DD Palmer, the first chiropractor,
Mhm.
he was the one who said that disease and dysfunction are caused from trauma, toxins, and autosuggestion, or basically thoughts." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's a very holistic point of view." And it was like, as a chiropractor, you're a physician. You're a primary care physician who can prescribe and treat, or diagnose and treat, and prescribe, different types of testing for them. You can practice nutrition. You can practice functional medicine. So you can do a whole lot. I was like, oh, I didn't know. I didn't realize
Yeah, and I
that
think a lot of people
chiropractor.
still don't know that. I think you saying that right now, people are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, don't you just like work on, work on the
Yeah.
body?" But there's so much of a broader scope and depth of
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I literally thought I was going into chiropractic school to crack people's back, to do a technique called ART, active release
Yeah,
technique.
ART is awesome.
Yeah, which I love it. I love them. I love like that type of work, but that's what most people think about when they think about chiropractic, is that it's just the musculoskeletal work.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell people, I'm like, no, actually, there's so much more to it.
We're going to talk about the more to it now. We're going to dive in.
Yeah.
We're going to get into your philosophy of intentionally disruptive, but I want to get in
Yeah.
and talk a little bit about the fungus side of things, which is really, one of the things I want coaches out there listening to understand more about. We have a transformation mentorship, which is a program we do where we take nutritionist trainers, and we teach them our stress reduced fat loss system. So we're trying to teach them how to do better holistic transformations, how to work on the gut, how to work on the three big hormones: insulin, cortisol, growth hormone. How to get them to sleep better, because then they can get holistic transformations by the body healing first. So the transformations are a side effect of that healing. So I think a lot of them, fungus is a huge part that many coaches don't understand.
Hmm.
Why are they getting it? Why are my clients getting it? What can be seen if they have it?
Hmm.
Like what are some issues that people can come up with? And then what are some ways to kind of get them past it? Because I would say you can't out train fungus. You can't sweat it out. Let me just sweat it out on the cardio machine. Like
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
it's flourishing, your weight isn't going to move.
yeah,
Like so. Well, let's talk a little bit about. This is one of the million topics that we're going to talk about with you, because there's 5 million that I wrote down when I
yeah.
first reached out to you. So I'm going to have you back again. But let's talk about fungus.
Sure.
I said let's talk a little about that. What is fungus? What is this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So for a lot of people, they know fungus because they have toe fungus,
Yeah,
or they have some
chalk
sort of
itch.
like, yeah, chalk itch, right? Ringworm type of thing like that. And so, we're talking about what we're talking about is that, but a little bit lesser degree, where it's a little bit more unknown, right? There's more nuance to it, right? And even eczema, psoriasis, right? Rashes, skin issues could be a sign of fungus. Dry scalp and dandruff, right, could be a sign of fungus, right? So you can see the stuff spill over into the skin. And what it really is what's on your body, in the outside body, right, in the skin, is really what's reflective of inside the body, whether it's in your gut, in your organs, right, in our tissues. So fungus is very prevalent, especially in today's world. Fungal infections are usually caused by exposure. So, exposure to moldy environments, like a moldy home. Like if somebody, like right now, it's raining like cats and dogs out here in Southern California. So, like God forbid, like if somebody had a leak and into their home, and then the wood gets wet, it's damp in there, they don't get it remediated, mold is going to grow from that, and then later on, like months or years later down the line, like that mold just keeps proliferating and keeps growing, and it starts penetrating into different areas, and then it goes into your HVAC system, it goes into your into your air that you breathe, and then those spores land on your body, and then in your body, and in your body it's a warm, wet, dark environment, which is where they thrive. And now we begin to see symptoms where people are experiencing this fungal infection because of the inflammation that's happening in your body, because of these toxins that these funguses like release into the bloodstream,
Are there
right?
any other
So
ways that someone can get, let's say they're like, I got a fungal free environment, like I'm not getting it in my HVAC. Is there any other ways that they can kind of like get fungus to kind of like, I would say, grow inside them more? Because usually we all have
totally.
fungus. It's
Yeah.
under control, right?
Totally. So we have exactly. And that's where like terrain theory comes in really handy. So there's always this battle between germ theory, which is right, I caught it, right? I caught the bug. And
Yeah.
then there's terrain theory, which is like, no, you have the bug. And these bugs are here to live with us and cooperate with us. But if you poison the body, then these bugs are going to go crazy. So if you poison the body with antibiotics, with poor diet, right, refined sugars, processed food, processed seed oils, right, hormone replacement therapies, if we poison the body, and even emotional toxins too,
Yeah.
right, and then these toxins that come inside our bodies, right, and whether we're doing it to ourselves or whether we're getting it exposed from other places, it's going to sicken the system, it's going to weaken our immune system. And then now these bacterias, fungus, parasites, viruses, they're there to help us degrade this toxin, right? But sometimes there's a concept called pleomorphism. And pleomorphism is basically when there's a presence of a toxin, now you have the changing of the morph, right? Metamorphosis
Mhm.
of a microbe. So now this fungus that was in your body, that's really like, you guys are just kind of like hanging out together and doing life together,
Right.
right? And you're cooperating together. All of a sudden, this guy turns on you because there was a presence of a synthetic toxin there. And now that fungal toxin, now that fungus becomes a toxin, right? It becomes pathogenic because it's
Mhm.
trying to degrade the chemical, and it's off gassing, it's releasing other types of chemical mediators, metabolites that are causing inflammation in the body, and one of them being like histamine, for example,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah. And so most people will be like, oh, I have a high histamine. This is why, like, I have high histamines and this is why I feel so bad. And I go, what's causing the histamine? It could be a
Yes.
fungal infection.
Absolutely. So then,
So
so then now knowing that, we know some of the signs and symptoms. When you see someone they have fungal stuff, what would be, or if coaches are listening out there, what would be their first steps and saying, okay, what are some steps then to start not killing fungus? Because I never want to say that, but dealing with it. What would be your first kind of steps with that? So,
So dealing with fungus, number one is really I change the diet because the diet is most important. So I got three things typically that I do. You got to starve the pathogen. You got to clear it, cleanse it, remove it, and then you got to avoid re-exposure, right? And where we get exposure is from our house or our spouse. That's a saying. So, like from people, so yes, you can transfer it. And they did a study where it was like in a 10-second like French kiss, you pass like 80 million microbes, which is a lot. So, like your spouse or your sexual partner or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, like they could be a source of re-exposure. Your house could be a source of re-exposure if you don't
I've seen clients
remediate.
do that where they go back and forth. We're trying to kill it off, and luckily we're treating both. And I'm like, you know what?
Hmm.
You guys are passing this back and forth. I said, tell your husband he needs to do a fungal cleanse because like
Yeah.
we're doing it's coming back every time they have some sort of. I go, did you guys mess around this weekend? Like everything's like out of control again. Like
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah. We know your pattern. So,
Every
yeah.
Thursday night, your fungal infections get fucked up. No, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
So it's there's so many symptoms, a lot of common symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, abdominal symptoms, GERD, depression, migraines, and
Hmm.
difficulty concentrating, rashes, eczema, asthma, nutrition depletion, chronic pain, arthritis, ADHD, thrush, and even vaginal yeast infections, inability to lose weight, right? Weight loss and weight gain issues, chemical sensitivities and ringworm and food sensitivities. Those are all symptoms of fungus overgrowth in the body, right? And again,
Those are all
like,
the things we take pills for. Those are all the things we're like, oh, yeah, it's trying to mitigate other ways, but
yeah,
maybe there's something underneath. So when you say change diet, give us an example. What would be like, all right, like what would be some things you'd say, I want you to, instead of having this, maybe have this. Let's go through a couple points there. What would,
yeah. So really, to clear fungus, you got to avoid things that have sugar in it, right? And um, sugar is one of those things. It's so highly addictive, but sweeteners and sugars and corn syrup and all these things we really have to get rid of in order for you to not feed that fungus.
what about
um
fruit? A lot of coaches say, what about fruit?
mhm.
Is fruit's a natural sugar. Can I still keep it?
Yeah, I would say here's the thing. If I do too many things to remove our body, to shift our bodies out of normal physiology, like to go completely like zero to no carb, it's going to be really hard for a person.
Hmm.
So I would have patients and I would go, you can keep fresh fruits in there. And we know that fresh fruits have a lot of compounds in there that help with mitigating. It's not just the sugar component
Yeah.
in there. I think there's a lot of medicinal properties in fruit that is often overlooked. And so, I'm okay with actually people being on fresh fruit. Now,
Yep.
if you start like juicing things and stuff like that, that becomes questionable. But what we
Yeah.
know is not questionable, like it's like a for sure no, are like your high fructose corn syrup, your refined and processed sugar, even vinegar, right? Because vinegar is grown from mold essentially.
Right.
Um, So vinegars, your alcohol for sure. Alcohol just turns into sugar.
What about apple
Soy.
cider vinegar? I know someone's gonna ask, what about apple cider vinegar? I heard
Yeah,
vinegar.
I would say all vinegar. If you're dealing,
Okay.
if you really want to get rid of, and again, this is probably about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a month, and it's really not that hard. Kombucha, yeah, I got to get rid of kombucha. Like, people,
Oh my
it is
goodness.
not. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of kombucha for
Me
gut
neither.
health, right? It's often sweetened. It's you got the alcohol component to it sometimes, and it's just yeah, you can drive more yeast issue, way more yeast issue
Absolutely.
when people are doing kombucha. And I believe that over there's a prevalence of these types of issues, SIBO and fungal issues, because people are using a lot of things like probiotics and kombucha and all these things that
Yeah.
I think are not necessary. If you just change your diet and eat a whole food diet, you can change your gut microbiome and have alpha diversity in there, right? We don't need to always just stuff ourselves with a probiotic, I believe.
Okay.
So that's kind of the advice that I typically give people for to be, and definitely and for me, I test for food sensitivity. So I always sometimes take people off of gluten, dairy, corn and soy and nightshades, maybe even like take them off of eggs in the moment if
Hmm.
that's
Because of
giving
what?
them
Just like the weakening of the gut wall because of the inflammation, the dampness, all that kind of stuff that can happen in the gut, I guess.
correct. Yeah. So the more that we do to inflame the system, the harder the more of an uphill battle it has.
Mhm.
So just taking away some of the things that insult the immune system, right, is going to be important because the idea is really we want to help allocate enough energy so that there's enough energy to heal the gut and heal the body. But if it's too busy dealing with, you ate gluten and then you're now inflamed, it's got to deal with that issue. You ate dairy and now you're inflamed and you're all mucusy, it's got to deal with that issue. It's like we're just robbing away energy that
And also,
robs us from our
wouldn't that
healing.
help, right? Like I said, if you're more mucusy and even more damp, isn't it a great place for fungus to go? Hey, I'm stronger in a mucusy damp environment, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
that's a good
exactly.
point.
You start building what's called like biofilms, which are basically mucus in your body. And these microbes, these pathogens, and heavy metals and toxins go and hide in this mucus. And, it's really hard to fight them at that point.
Hmm. So then, okay, so now we're going to starve them. We're going to change, how we're eating. Any quick or any different like supplement protocols you may use for fungus, and then let's go over just quickly the suggestion of you said there's a fungal diet, which is pretty much more whole foods, right? You're pretty much
Right. It's whole foods. It's like what I just said there, which
okay.
is avoiding like the fermented foods and avoiding sugar for the most part. That's pretty much that's the bread and butter of it. Some of the supplements that I use for that or herbs at least are things like I'll just ramble them off here. People
Yeah.
may or may not get it, but I use a lot of morinda,
Mhm.
which is the noni herb. I use a lot of neem leaf.
Mhm.
I use Chinese coptis or golden thread, which has lots of berberine in it. So,
Oh, there you
and
go.
then I use a lot of Vedanga, which is also good for parasites.
Mhm.
Um, and then I also use sometimes mimosa pudica seed, which are also good for parasites, but I find that it can also help clear some fungal issues too for people. And then Chinese skullcap, which is Scutellaria.
Yeah.
So some of those herbs I use a lot to help, treat essentially and get rid of fungus. Oh, and cat's claw. How can I forget about cat's claw? So
Mhm.
cat's claw is another one. So I use a lot of these herbs in my practice to correct some of these issues and help that physiology return back to normal.
All right, so that's going to be the clearing portion. Now we're in the clearing portion, and you said again, finally watching and making sure there's no like, resensitization. So where you're going out and like inflaming yourself again. Is that more what we're talking about? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. So
like a
really
lot of a lot of
understand.
coaches will be like, "Hey, you're done on Thursday," and the client's like, "On Friday, and I can have this, right? I can go ahead and have a bottle of wine, some bread and a donut, right?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah."
No, it doesn't work like that. It's really changing that lifestyle up, right? And understanding how your food is connected with, your microbes and how that affects your system, how it weakens or strengthens your system. Understanding that, maybe I have something in my home, right? Whether it's mold or something that I need to remediate. And it's so common, right? Like check your HVAC. People can get a Hermes test. People can run different types of mold tests, right? They're not all super like reliable all the time, but it's still good to run those things because you might pick up something. What I do in the office is I do a lot of muscle testing. So I have people bring in air samples. I have people bring in like cheek swabs and things like that
Hmm.
of their spouses, of their pets, um, of their home, things like that. And I check their bodies against that, check their nervous system against it, along with like the lab testing and things like that that we do in the office as well too. So we take this like disciplinary, like multi-layered approach to their entire care to figure out, to do the detective work and figure out, hey, what do we need to do? What do we need to change up in your lifestyle so that you can avoid re-exposure? If it's your spouse, well, he needs to go on a cleanse. If it's your dog, well, your dog needs to go on a cleanse, right? If it's your house, you need to either move or remediate, get an ozone generator, something, right, in there. And it's really about like this learning process. So these
What's an ozone
symptoms,
generator? Just quickly, what's that? Just for
yeah,
people like, what's that? Okay.
yeah, so people can buy an ozone generator. Don't do this yourself if you're not educated on it because it can be, so an ozone generator is, you can buy it off like eBay or Amazon or something like that. And what it does is basically kills mold. It kills whatever it can get exposed to, whatever it can get its hands on. So
Is
sometimes
it like
what
an air
happens,
purifier? You know, the ones that are like ultraviolet lasers and and they can shoot out
yeah.
all. Is it like that or no different?
No, no, it literally it generates ozone and it emits ozone, and ozone gas we can't breathe. Like pets and people and plants cannot breathe it. So otherwise it's toxic for us. Anyway, so what we do is we put it in the room or put it in a certain area of the house and we run the generator. It's like probably like this big, and you run it for about a few hours. You come back in, it's turned off, you air out the home, you go back out for an hour after the home's aired out. And then what it does is it kills a lot of the spores, the mold spores and the fungal spores in the home. People use it a lot to also get rid of odor. But what it's doing is just getting rid of these like microbial spores that's in your environment. So that helps a lot with decreasing, just the total load that people have on their microbes.
Ozone generator, nice. I learned something. I've never heard of that. I've heard of
Yeah.
like amazing $4,000 or $500, air purifiers. You can attach it to your thing and it pushes it out. But I like the ozone
Yeah.
generator. So then, if
Ozone,
someone
ozone
wants to do that,
generator. Yeah. Ozone generator is like $50.
nice. I like that. That's better. That's better. But if someone wants to understand how to use that, is it instructional? Can they just buy it, or do they have to hire someone to like do the ozonation process? Or
No, it's not. Yeah, I would say, definitely do your research on this first before doing it yourself. And there's a lot of material online that people could do.
and people can
If
reach out to you. They can go,
Yeah, they could
Dr.
reach out.
Calvin, come on. I want to use my ozonator. I'm not probably not even
Exactly.
what it's called, but I want to use
Yeah.
this. Can they reach out to you to ask you that? Because I think a lot of
Yeah,
people on the show is going to be like, all right, I'm gonna beeline you and do this. So
absolutely. They can.
that's awesome. All right. Well, I know we're running out of time here. You got to split, but I want to just go before I go. Number one, I want to say thanks for coming on today. You and I can talk forever. I told you we're
Yeah,
coming to
for
Southern
sure.
California to hang out. I already said that we're going to come and hang out a little bit because
Great.
I just love your energy, brother. So I like that. But how do people find you? They said like because we're going to have you back on. But in the meantime, if people want to find you,
Yeah.
you got to follow his content is amazing. He's had stuff on there. The portable thing to warm up your food, like all these things that you put on there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, people can find me on Instagram, Dr. Calvin Ing NG. People can find me on my website, drcalvinng.com. So I'm on Facebook too, so people can plug into that. I have a free newsletter that I'll be doing soon. I'll be picking back up again, and then gonna push more content out about stuff, and hopefully get some free content out for people so that they can just dive into it. Because yeah, there's a lot of misinformation I feel like in the world, so I want to help educate people on what's really up.
And for you, I like it because we talk about this living intentionally is something that I really got from being on your Instagram. And I resonate with that, you know, like making decisions and choices based on a set of rules and values that you have. And I think that's so important. Like decisions on where am I going to eat? What am I going to have in my life? Am I using
Mhm.
plastic? Like all these things, what kind of cleaners? I like the other one today, water and vinegar. Clean your house with that. It's simple. You know, things that are simple, right? That we don't
Yeah.
do. So if you're looking for more intentional kind of living and solutions to a lot of the problems out there, you have to check out Dr. Calvin. You have to check him out. So
Awesome. Thanks, man.
no
Appreciate it.
problem. No problem. Appreciate you having on there. Our anyone listening out there, students, they said our next transformation mentorship cohort starts March 27th. That's coming up real fast. So if you're looking to find better ways to do holistic transformations with your clients, maybe have a better business model, understand how to solve more problems, or even just feel more confident with the type of people coming in to your business. You could be a business owner with trainers. You could be a self-employed. You could be a coach yourself. You know, send us a DM or go to www.transformationmentorship.ca. Do a quick application, you know, or hit us up on Instagram, Transformation Mentorship, and apply. You know, maybe the best thing that you do to get started. So, I guess, Calvin, until next time, man. I said we're
Till
gonna
next time.
I'm gonna reach out
Thanks for
again.
having me.
Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah. No, it was good. It was
Awesome.
good. So,
Thank you, brother.
all right,
Appreciate
you
it.
have a great day.
You too.